Listen now, it's in the garage.
Something's up there has been chasing us since tumbleweed. We're not gonna make it. Come on, let's go! Keep it moving, let's go! Come on, let's go! Keep it moving, let's go! That storm seems to be chasing the sins of mankind. It doesn't seem like we'll make it out of it if it catches us. We're going. Come on, let's go! Keep it moving, let's go!
The storm seems to be subsiding, sir. Do you mind if we pull over so I may use the lavatory?
I reckon I can do that, ma'am. We're not supposed to be in Blackwater for another 3 days. We're ahead of schedule.
Why, thank you, sir. I'm much obliged.
Huh? You hear that? Oh, hell no. Let you pitch it off. I know you hear that. Come on, let's go! Keep it moving, let's go! Let's hear a story while we travel to pass the time.
I shall tell you about something that happened a couple of years ago when I was in Germany. I was on a hiking tour through the Harz Mountain District. As you know, the more elevated portions are rough and dreary, and the soil is sterile, but the scenery is very interesting, with the rounded and graceful form of the Brocken towering above all the other mountains. The Rostrap, which stands nearby in the same group, is not so tall but is far more rugged in aspect than the Brocken, and it was in this district that the events occurred which I shall relate. I had been enjoying it all immensely until the night of All Hallows Eve. The goal I had set for the evening was the town of Goslar, situated on the Goss at the base of the Rammelsberg. There are some public buildings there I wish to see which were erected in the 15th century. The Imperial Palace, in part a ruin, and the Gothic Church, the treasure of which is a number of Luther's manuscripts. The people of this town, and indeed of the whole district, are hard-working and God-fearing. The more ignorant are, however, very superstitious, believing in all sorts of witchcraft, charms, and magic. Several friendly persons had mentioned that it was All Hallows Eve that vampires, witches, and other cohorts of the devil would be abroad that night, and it were well that all good folk should be indoors with a holy cross on the door to protect them. I paid no attention to their talk, of course, and the day itself was uneventful, except that toward evening, when I realized that it would be after dark before I could reach Goslar, I stopped for refreshments. The good woman who served me offered the hospitality of her home for the night, and warned me against being abroad after sundown. I thanked her, but said I would press on, as I would surely arrive in Goslar in time to secure lodging. She appeared troubled that I insisted on departing, and at the moment of my departure thrust a crude wooden cross into my hand, saying, "All who are brought tonight will be in great peril, and will surely need the protection of the Holy Cross. Keep it with you. They will try to get it away from you, but don't let it go a minute. They will try all sorts of tricks, but don't let them have it. Don't let them fool you." I felt foolish, but I thanked her for her kindness and, thrusting it into my pocket, forgot all about it until later. As the sun neared the horizon that evening, an air of expectancy seemed to hover over the land, and the long shadows cast by the strange rock formations took on weird shapes. A queer, coppery glow covered the sky, and the whole earth appeared to bask in the reflected glow from some vast devil's pit. The wind blew cold and chill, and moaned as it rushed by, as though it fled in fear of something. When the sun sank from sight, I looked toward the west, and a long line of birds or bats was streaming across the sky. With that infernal glow behind them, it created a most uncanny effect. I could well understand how an ignorant and superstitious person might imagine them to be vampires, bats, and witches flying to some unholy tryst.
Must have changed in Agginsburg. The storm seems to be creeping upon us. We're not that far from shelter.
Well, I reckon and I do declare, thank my star stripes and banners underwear. We have made it to safety. We are safe. Thank you, sir.
We made it to Blackwater safe and sound. Hell of a storm. This looks like where my story begins and y'all's story ends. But before we part, come on into the bar tavern and let me go ahead and buy y'all a round. Whoa, Betsy, hey, back that ass up now. It's time to put it in park. Come on, girl, slow and do it. Come on, follow me, weary travelers, before you catch a cold out here in Pneumonia Town.
Well, hey there, it's nice to see you again.
Always good to see you, old timer, just passing through. What y'all fellas doing? A little hand of poker? Hold on, I'll be back.
Is there something I can get for you?
Yeah, so whiskey sour peach, please.
Whiskey?
That's fine.
Come to get my ration of the power.
I have a Shirley Temple.
Was with a friendly wager I do declare. May I take a seat and play forth with you fellas? Yes, nice and tidy. I have my chips. Let's play, fellas. Now, as I take y'all's money, baller status I am, all in I shall go. Let me tell y'all fellas a story.
I've never been much of an outdoor person, but the summer after my second year in college, one of my roommates convinced me to go tent camping with him. It was only over the weekends, and I wasn't doing anything anyway, so I said I'd go with him. For the sake of privacy, I'll call him Jake. Now, Jake would go all out. He had a 2014 Jeep Wrangler, the entire back seat filled almost completely with different camping gear. He didn't like to reserve spots at actual campsites, but instead find his own spots, which he said made it more fun. We drove up into the Rocky Mountains for a while until we found a break in the trees with enough space to fit the Jeep through. We then drove off-road between trees until I pointed out a good spot. We set up a fire pit, chairs, and the tent we'd be staying in for the night. It was already around 7 p.m. and the sun was starting to set. Jake went to the car and pulled out a bag of hot dogs for us to cook over the fire. Real original, I know, but they were an easy meal, and plus Jake wanted to give me the true camping experience, seeing it was my first time. He even brought stuff for s'mores. Although, we never got that far. As we were cooking the hot dogs, this extremely loud female screaming from maybe 300 or 400 feet away echoed out throughout the trees. I looked up and saw Jake's head turn around behind him towards the direction of the screams. At first, there weren't any words we could make out, but then there was a help, a please, and a no, all of them sounding more desperate than the last. Then the loudest, most terrifying scream was abruptly cut off mid-scream. Jake looked back in my direction. The look on his face was pure horror. As far as we knew, the closest man-made structure was the road, and even that was far away. No one should have been out here. Whatever it was that we just heard didn't even matter. We knew we needed to leave as fast as possible. We started frantically throwing things in the back of the Jeep. We stuffed the still fully made tent inside as we closed the door. I tried calling 911 as we started driving back to the road. I had practically no service out there, but somehow still managed to get on the line with an operator. I did my best to explain what we heard, and they said they'd send out a trooper as soon as possible. It probably took us twice as long to get back to the road, just because this time we couldn't see anything. Finally, we saw the pavement, and stopped for a second. We didn't know if we should wait for the cops or not. That's when we saw a figure walking out from the trees in front of us. He was wearing jeans with an all-black sweatshirt, the hood covering his face. He was dragging something behind him in a heavy sheet or some kind of bag. His head was down, lying almost limp as he walked. He looked over in our direction when blue and red police lights revealed themselves down the road. The man turned his head and started sprinting back into the forest, letting go of the bag. The police saw this and started chasing after him. The bag he was dragging turned out to contain the remains of a 34-year-old woman. We don't know if he was ever caught. So, this happened when I was in middle school. It was summer, and my parents had signed me up for a month-long all-boys summer camp. The campsite was exactly what you're imagining, 6 or 7 small cabins spread out in the forest. There was a small lake, a few fire pits set up, and I think there was even a sand volleyball court if I'm remembering right. It was close to 4 hours out of town. The place was old and run down, but definitely still used often for summer camps. When we got there, I unpacked all my stuff into one of the cabins and set up my bed. Some of the kids I'd be staying with wanted to check out the forest before we'd have to be back for dinner. The rules of the camp were pretty laid back. We were told we could go as far as we wanted, as long as we could still see the cabins. As we were walking into the forest, one of the kids pointed something out, or rather someone. A man who had to be over 50 years old stood a few yards away looking in our direction. He looked almost homeless, really unkempt, dirty clothes, a rough gray beard. We ultimately just assumed he was one of the camp counselors. The guy gave us a weird smile, and I gave him an awkward wave back. We ran back to our cabin, and later that night told one of the camp counselors about it. They took it very seriously, even going out to that part of the woods themselves, but by then the guy was gone. We started to realize that a large portion of the camp counselors were teenagers. No one was older than like 30. They didn't tell us straight to our faces, but it didn't seem like they had any idea who that man was. The next few days, we didn't do much more exploring. We were still pretty creeped out, to be honest with you. It was on the 4th night when things really hit the fan. I was sleeping, and woke up to the sound of the cabin door handle rattling. Now, most nights at 11 p.m., one of the counselors would knock on all the cabins to remind the kids to lock their doors and go to sleep. Sometimes we would fall asleep before this, and it would end up waking us up. I thought this was what was happening, but I didn't have any way to tell the time, so I had no way of knowing. Being the only one awake, I felt obligated to yell out a response. I'm pretty sure I yelled out something about how we were already in bed. Right as I did this, a flashlight turned on from outside, and the light started pointing in through the windows. Someone was trying to see inside. By then, a couple of the other kids started to wake up. I remember motioning for them to get down. The person outside went around the cabin multiple times, pointing the light through every window as they did so. I don't know if they saw me, but I do know the light passed clear over me a good couple of times. After maybe 5 minutes, the light finally turned off, and everything once again returned to silence. I explained what happened to the other kids. One of them had a watch and looked at it. It was 4 a.m. That wasn't a counselor. We stayed awake until morning. Finally, one of the teenage counselors came to our cabin to wake us up for breakfast.